50 years of gardening will teach you a lot of things, and not all of them are lessons you wanted. I have planted things that look beautiful in the pot, brought them home with real excitement, cleared a good spot in the bed, and then spent the next 10 years trying to get rid of them. That's not a story I'm proud of, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway, because those 50 years were worth something extra if knowing about my mistakes keeps you from making your own. Now, before we go anywhere else, number 5 on this list is the hardest one for me to say. It's probably the most beloved plant passed between gardeners in this country. The one that gets divided and wrapped in newspaper and given with genuine love. The one that stops people cold in spring with its fragrance alone. And it is on this regret list. I will explain exactly why, and I think it may be the most important thing you hear today. Stay with me until we get there. What I have learned more than once is that the most dangerous plants in a garden are never the ugly ones. They're always the ones that looked irresistible in the pot. Beautiful foliage, interesting color, maybe something that smelled so good it stopped you cold in the garden center aisle. That's the plant that ends up in your beds for the next 20 years, whether you wanted it to stay or not. Number 1 is still being sold right now in every garden center in the pollinator section, described as nearly perfect and practically always in bloom. Bee balm is stunning. The flowers come in red and pink and lavender. The hummingbirds adore it. The bees pile onto it all summer long, and I understand completely why people reach for it. What nobody in those descriptions ever seems to mention is that bee balm spreads by underground runners quietly and quickly, and that by mid-July most years the whole clump looks like someone came through in the night with a bag of flour, powdery mildew. I fought it for years. I sprayed, I divided, I moved it to spots with better air circulation. Some seasons were worse than others, and there was not one season it was completely gone. I wasted 3 summers figuring this out so you don't have to. There are mildew-resistant varieties, Jacob Klein in red, raspberry wine in pink. And if you love bee balm, those are the ones to reach for. But go in with your eyes open about where those underground runners are headed next, because they will not stop and ask permission. Number 2 stopped me at the nursery every single time I walked past it, and I mean every single time, for years. Gooseneck leucostrife has these long arching white flower spikes that curve over like a swan's neck, and they arrive in midsummer when most of the garden is going quiet. I planted it once. Within 3 years it had moved 6 feet in every direction, through the roots of a rose I had grown for a decade, across a stone path, into a new colony on the other side of the garden entirely. Gooseneck loosestrife does not creep. It runs underground in silence, and by the time you notice where it has gotten to, it is already somewhere you did not invite it. If a plant needs that much fussing, it is not invited back into my garden, and that one was not. But what I planted around that time was somehow even harder to undo. Number 3 is the one I feel a little guilty warning people about, because the first time you see it, it genuinely is something. Chameleon plant has heart-shaped leaves splashed with red and yellow and green, and there's nothing else in the shade garden that looks quite like it. Garden centers won't always tell you this, but I will. Every fragment of root left behind when you try to remove it becomes a new plant. Dig it out, and you have scattered it. I know a woman who has been fighting a chameleon plant invasion for 11 years now. She laughs about it, but barely. This is the kind of thing your grandmother knew and nobody teaches anymore. Some plants are easier to invite than to ask to leave. Trust me on this one. If you love the look, grow it in a container with walls and nowhere to travel. Now, this is exactly the gap I kept watching when I put together the Lazy Garden Blueprint. Good gardeners bringing home beautiful plants with no real sense of which ones would fill a bed gracefully and which ones would quietly take it over entirely. So I built a 30-day system around plant combinations that actually work together, layers that crowd out weeds, come back reliably, and stay where you put them instead of deciding for themselves where they want to go next. If you want to see how that layering system works, it is on screen. But there are still 2 plants on this list I need to tell you about. Number 4 looked like a perfect solution to a bare stretch of fence. Ribbon grass, the variegated kind with the green and cream striped blades, moves beautifully in a breeze and fills space fast. And both of those things turned out to be completely true. It also went under the fence by the 2nd year, and through the roots of a lilac I had grown for 15 years by the 3rd. Ornamental grasses require real thought about placement, and ribbon grass in particular has absolutely no manners about where it decides to go next. Container only. A large pot where it can be as graceful as it likes, with no ground to escape into, and that is the only way it comes home with me. And then there is number 5. I have thought about how to say this gently, and I have decided the kindest thing is just to say it plainly. Lily of the valley is one of the most beautiful plants in this world. The small white bells, the fragrance on a cool May morning. There is nothing in any garden that comes anywhere close to it. People have offered me divisions over the years with such warmth and such good intentions, and every time I had to find a kind way to say no, thank you, because Lily of the Valley spreads by underground rhizomes, quietly and completely, and once it has filled a bed, it has made a permanent decision about that bed that is very hard to walk back. It is also toxic to dogs, to cats, to any small child who is still putting things in their mouth. I had a neighbor who planted it under her kitchen window because she loved the scent each spring. By the time her grandchildren were walking, she had a problem she could not fix in a single season. Grow lily of the valley only inside a raised bed with solid walls, or in a large container where it cannot go anywhere, or admire it in someone else's garden and leave it right there where it belongs. Before we close, out of these 5, which one surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments. Gardeners in every climate read those answers, and your real experience in your specific corner of the world helps someone else figure out what to avoid before they make the same expensive mistake. Now, knowing what not to plant is half the work. The other half is knowing what to reach for instead. The perennials that fill space without consuming it, that come back without taking over, that ask almost nothing from you and give back something beautiful all season long. That is the whole reason I built the Lazy Garden Blueprint. I kept watching good gardeners plant the right plants in the wrong combinations and then fight the garden all summer long, wondering why it never got easier. The blueprint is a 30-day system built around the lazy layer method. Plant combinations that each have a specific job, that crowd out weeds naturally, that carry color from late spring through frost without you standing out there every weekend trying to manage it. Every combination in it came from my own beds. Every one of them earned its place. It is not free because putting it together took real time, but it costs a good deal less than 3 seasons of fighting a plant that should never have been in the ground in the first place. The link is on screen. If you want the garden without the regret, that is where it is. 50 years of mistakes is also 50 years of knowing exactly what to reach for instead. You have 5 fewer of those mistakes to make starting today, sweetheart. Now go find something better for that spot in your garden. See you in the next one.